welcome to the Jazz Drummers Blueprint Podcast, Episode 8. I'm Andy.
And I'm Tim.
And today's topic, we are going to talk about auditioning and the opposite of auditioning, which is getting fired or released from a playing position. And Tim brought this one up because there's some news recently that makes it kind of worthwhile to talk about. What was that, Tim?
Well, so as you all probably know, Josh Freese got let go from the Foo Fighters, and he was shocked. And he said something in his statement that in his 40 years of being a professional musician, he'd never been let go from a band before, and found that kind of crazy, I mean, obviously he's a monster drummer that's capable of doing anything, but man, what an interesting topic. Like how do you handle that? How do you deal with it? And then what do you do next? Right. And so that's where the auditioning kind of comes from. So I think, as you all know, Josh Freese handled it like a pro because he is a pro. He obviously he said that he was shocked and let it go. And then he released like the most epic top 10 list ever. Yeah. I don't know if you saw that, Andy. But
there's always some humor in his posts. It's great.
Yes, of course. And I agree. I think it was probably the Poodles. No.
Well, and there's another high profile one too. Zach Starkey from The Who. And that was like a weird thing. Like they fired him and then they invited him back and then they fired him. It's like, some weird stuff.
That one seems weird. Yeah. I saw some posts about that too, where some people were saying that, Zach Starkey's sound has become part of the band and it's been the way it, because he's been with them for so long now. So I don't know what that's about. That seems like that one's a little bit more like there might be something else going on with that one because it's The Who, I don't know. That one seems a little weird. Not that the Foo Fighters one doesn't seem weird either. I mean, shoot, like Josh was doing an amazing job. I would say that, if I had to speculate, I think that they're looking for somebody who's going to be a Foo Fighter exclusively, because Josh is such a drummer that's everywhere doing everything, and I know that he was committed to the Foo Fighters, but, just seeing him go around and play again with the Perfect Circle and probably these other bands, maybe, in my own speculation, Foo Fighters is a band. And I know Taylor did his own bands as well. I guess the other players do go out and play with their own projects here and there, but none of them were quite as high profile as what Josh Freese does. So maybe there was a little bit of like that famousness clash in there or something. So I don't know. It's all speculation, but I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on it, Andy?
Well, it's definitely in both of those cases. It's certainly not about playing ability, right? I mean, these guys are just spectacular musicians, spectacular drummers. And it could be anything. And, we talk mostly about the jazz world, but, we're talking the same thing here. It happens across all genres. And, it could come down to something as, simple personality. It's like, hey, we're tired of hanging around with this guy. I mean, not saying that either of those, that might not be the case in either of these instances, but I mean, it could come down to that. And I guess the one big difference in the jazz world is that, in kind of the rock and pop music world, if it's a band, there's band members and there's usually, contracts between those members. And when they bring people in, it's usually very clear whether you're a member of the band and you get treated as such and compensated as such, or whether you're like a sideman that is hired in to play. Right. Usually that's taken care of. But, with high profile bands, I mean, certainly at the local level, usually doesn't get that involved. But
at the local level, it can be even cattier, we'll say.
Yeah, for sure. But in the jazz world, there's not so many jazz bands. I mean, every once in a while you'll see a jazz quote unquote band, but for the most part, it's just like there's a leader, or maybe there's not a leader, maybe just a couple of guys, and they just hire whoever they want for a particular time frame. So it's a little bit less like as a jazz musician, I think you kind of expect that, right? You come and you go and you get asked to do gigs or you don't ask to get.
Right. You're a sideman for a lot of things.
Yeah. Whereas, in the rock world, and I would say even especially at the, medium to lower levels, you get involved with the band and you feel like you're part of the band. So when you do get let go, fired, it's hard not to take personally. Right.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's just hard no matter what. It doesn't even matter
yeah,
if you're
sure.
a sideman on a gig, it's like, it's just difficult because you're like, what did I do wrong? How did I not get that gig? What did I do to do this? And sometimes there really just isn't an answer. Maybe they're just not feeling you, and instead of prolonging it, they're like, you know what, we really just got to go with somebody else. And Josh actually mentioned something that was really interesting in there too, which I honestly might have been a thing, where he said that he was too good and too perfect of a drummer, and his time was too good, and that he seems soulless. And I feel like that may have come from something. And like it I could honestly see that as being a comment that was made to him by Dave Grohl or by the Foo Fighters, and that might, I wouldn't consider that the reason, because I mean he definitely played with soul. I actually saw the Foo Fighters on that last tour with Josh Freese, and I thought that Josh played amazing. Like, he really elevated the band. Like, the musicianship was so high. It's just ridiculous. So there can be a time where you are too good for a band, and I mean that may have been the situation, honestly, because you look back to the early Foo Fighters records. I mean, it's all Dave Grohl. It is, and Dave Grohl is far from perfect. He's an amazing drummer with an amazing feel, but he's far from perfect, right? And that's, in fact, if you look at early modern drummer articles about Dave Grohl, people got mad that he was on the cover. Do you remember those, Andy?
Vaguely.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I was going through the archives a few months ago, and Modern Drummer Archives, and there were letters to the editor about, why did you put this no talent person up there when you could have put up like Buddy Rich or like all these other people, that, probably not Buddy, he was dead at that time, but like, why are you giving this no talent hacks all this attention? And it's funny because Dave Grohl at the time was just a guy that hit the drums really hard, but had this really great natural feel. And so I don't know. I wonder if that was kind of what was missing from their thing. And so Josh definitely is not. Josh, man, like, if you ever check him out on Sting's stuff, like if you go back and you listen to him playing with Sting, you're like, dude, this guy sounds like Vinny Colaiuta. Like, he's got Vinny chops, but he can also play in Nine Inch Nails and In Perfect Circle, and then he's like on Michael Bublé's record. Like, it just, Josh Freese is magic on the drums, and I think that might be he might have just been too good. I've been in those situations before where I was like ahead of the curve with the band that I was in, and like, not saying that out of an ego sort of thing, it's just the truth of where it was. And sometimes they just couldn't hear what you were doing. I did a record once for this person. I'm gonna leave it at that. So it was a remote record, and I got asked to play a fill. It was kind of a pop record, and I got asked to play a fill, and I played this fill that I orchestrated, and it was a really good fill, but it kind of like, it was like a solo fill, and they told me I could do whatever I wanted. And so I played this fill, and I sent it to them, and then they called me back, and they were like, hey man, that's really cool, but your fill is out of time. I'm like, no, it's not. They're like, yeah, it is. I was like, no, if you put a metronome to it, you can check it out. It's like, everything is right on time. Everything's perfectly in there. Like, I orchestrated the fill. It's one of the few times I worked it out. And so I kind of stuck to my guns on that, which, as a session musician, you shouldn't have. I should have given him a dumbed down option. But so anyway, long story short, I got the record eventually, and they just cut it out completely. Silence. So, what are you gonna do? So yeah, I don't know. How do you handle being fired from a band? So, like, in a jazz perspective, like you were talking about, Andy, like, a lot of times you just don't get called again. Like, you're not necessarily let go. You're just not
hired. Not hired again. Yeah.
so you can kind of like, I feel like in the jazz world, it has its seasons, and the people you play with have their seasons with you. And honestly, I feel like you get to a certain level where everybody sounds great. And I totally understand when people want to go in a different direction, because I don't always have the right tools to be the drummer that everybody wants. I can be a very reliable drummer and get the gig and play it well, but I might not be able to play it like Thomas Pridgeon would play it, right? Like Thomas Pridgeon is an amazing drummer that plays in a very different style than I play. And so if they're looking for something like that in the jazz that they're writing or playing, then I'm not your guy. And so it's okay. I understand that. And that I don't always need to even be told that I'm not your guy, because I'll hear it in the music that you're playing, right? And so in jazz, you really just I don't feel like you get fired as much as you get not hired. And, you'll find your other people to play with in your other gigs. And it just kind of rolls around like that. Has that been your experience, Andy?
Definitely. Yeah. Especially, in the kind of freelance jazz world, right? It's just, there's a band leader and they hire who they want for a particular gig. Maybe they, want you and they hear what you bring to the table on that particular situation, and maybe they don't,
Yeah.
and I think that, you do have a leg up if you're versatile, right? Yeah. So like, if you can play, different dynamics, different styles, things like that. Like if it's a gig where, maybe it's jazz, but maybe there's also some pop or funk stuff in there as well. If they know that you can play that stuff, you have a better chance. Whereas if they know you as only a jazz drummer and they've never heard you play, backbeat stuff, they might not hire you. So, being versatile, I think is your, gives you a little bit of a leg up, but it still doesn't guarantee anything.
Yeah, no, not at all. And sometimes that versatility, even becoming a jack of all trades and a master of none, right? Like you have to be careful with some of that versatility. And it's okay to niche down, I think, a little bit too. Like if you wanted just said, hey, you know what? Like the Steve Lyman, for example, like, if you've checked him out on Instagram or whatever, he kind of started out as a really straight ahead jazz guy. And now he's doing all sorts of, like his brain is doing what his brain tells him to do. And it's really cool because he's following his own path and his own matrix, we'll call it, because that's what it feels like in his own playing. But it's also, it's not for everyone, and that's okay. So like, he's certainly the guy that could do these, jazz gigs and all that stuff, but he's choosing not to because he's niching down to this electronic music that he wants to do. And I think that that's really cool. And, he'll get the gigs that he wants to get based off of that. Speaking of that, we could maybe talk a little bit about auditioning for bands and everything too now. So since we've talked about getting fired, you're going to need to get another gig. Today's episode is brought to you by the Jazz Drummers Blueprint. It's a year-long mentorship program that I have created that is designed to give you the results in your jazz drumming that you never thought was possible, that will take you from learning transcriptions to learning snare drum solos to learning all sorts of crazy stuff that is really great for becoming the best musician that you can possibly become. So if you're interested, please take a look at the link below, and we'll see you hopefully soon.
Before we leave that, getting fired or not rehired subject, real quick, it's just, I guess we need to make sure that it happens to everyone, right? So you need to know that, and you need to try. I mean, as sometimes it does, it hurts. It's a blow to the ego, but you got to try not to let it affect you, I think. And you need to just jump right back out there. Like if you're working with a project, a bunch of people, sometimes you feel like you're really good friends, and sometimes you feel like you've lost friends because of this. Mm-hmm. That takes it's a little bit of a sting and might take a little while to get over, but definitely, get out and keep playing and try to find a new group of people, because there's there's lots of other opportunities out there.
Oh, absolutely. And let it be a learning experience for you too. A lot of people can get really depressed when they get let go from things, and it stings, it hurts. And like Andy said, it will happen to you. It will. And it's happened to me. It'll happen to just about anybody that has ever played an instrument. Because the music industry is tough, It's and again, it might not even have anything to do with your playing ability. It might just be like, hey, I'm more bros with this guy than I am with you, so I want to hang out with my bros while we play music. So cool, like what are you gonna do?
Yeah. I mean, so the bottom line is it's okay, right? Yeah. It happens to everyone. It's okay. yes, it might hurt. Yes, you might take a little while to get over in certain circumstances, but you'll come through, and just keep out there, keep making the contacts, keep trying
Keep
to get better
practicing.
and
Keep
better
trying to
gigs.
get
Keep
better.
practicing, yeah,
Build your skills.
absolutely.
Build your skills. Don't let it be like a negative thing for you. Let it be a positive thing. I mean, how many of you have been out there like broken up with your partner and become a better version of yourself after breaking up with somebody so that you could attract the next best person, like that's or even just win the person back or whatever, like that's what being in a band is like. And if you go out there and you have that energy where, hey, I'm gonna just be better, I'm not gonna let this happen to me again, and you develop that thick skin, and you're like, I'm not gonna let this happen because I'm gonna be better than I've ever been, and you go out there and you just win, so that's what's going to happen for you if you take it that way. If you take it the other way, where it's like, oh, I'm not good enough, I'll never make it, and you just lay in bed all day, like that's never going to get you anywhere. So you always have to take take your wins and losses and turn them into learning experiences. Learn from your wins, and especially learn from your failures.
Yeah,
that's how it goes.
And sometimes you do have to have patience as well, especially like in my circumstance, I moved to a new location, in the last year, and it was hard to go from, having a bunch of gigs to having no gigs, and then being like, oh my God, I got to get gigs. I got to meet people. And, you get out there and you do that, but you also do have to have some patience, so if you lose a gig, maybe you get another gig right away, but maybe not. Maybe it just takes a little while, and just have patience, keep practicing, keep making yourself better, and it'll happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Enough of that. Auditioning.
Speaking of auditioning, so actually, Andy, a really good question for you. Since you're kind of in that new situation where you're in a new town, you're kind of, I mean, still, it's not new anymore, but you're making your way in a new area. We're talking about auditions, but I want to ask you, how many auditions have you been on?
So I guess, again, in the jazz world, what's an audition? Sometimes the audition is a gig, right? Like you get hired to play a gig, and maybe it's like a low paying gig or even a free gig, but that gig is really the audition.
Yep.
So several, I guess, guys who have trusted me enough to hire me for a particular gig that wasn't, the be all end all. But in at least one instance, that one gig that was almost like a favor led to a gig that was a decent paying gig at a theater.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing. And I would even go so far as to say that, when you go to jam sessions, it's almost like an audition. If there's people there that have gigs and are looking to hire people, you are essentially auditioning for them at the jam session.
Exactly. I don't think that there's, in the jazz world, auditions happen when you're trying to get into music school, and then they happen when you just go and play with people, right? Somebody might ask you over to their house to play music. And if it's somebody that you like and respect and that you want to play with, you always say yes to that. And you will learn, and they might kind of groom you in a way to be in their band. They'll tell you what you like, what they don't like. They want to see how they work, how you work with them. And so auditioning isn't really in its classic form an audition. I think it's mostly like, what is the story? Miles hired somebody, I think it was hired Jimmy Cobb or something. And he said, hey, I need you in San Francisco tomorrow so that you can play this gig. And Jimmy Cobb's like, what? And like had to fly out, figure it out. He knew all the repertoire and just got there like after the first set started, and that started his relationship with Miles, So that's a total paraphrase of that story, but a lot of times it wasn't that there was an audition, it's that they've already heard you. And so anytime you play your instrument, you're auditioning for somebody, right?
Yeah. And,
so
and I would say too, in the jazz world, in my experience, it's like word of mouth is the most important thing. I would say like all of the gigs that I got, the last 4 or 5 years I was in LA was word of mouth. I didn't, there was no auditions. There was no, it was like, either it was someone else who was on a pickup gig that I was on that liked the way I played and then hired me to do something else, or maybe they saw me playing, at a farmer's market somewhere or something illustrious like that, and said, hey, I got this gig at this club, wherever, can you do it? House jam sessions. I've had several great opportunities to, get together with people at various, homes, and, that person whose house it was, or maybe even somebody else who was just jamming there, gets a gig, and who do they call? They call you, because they've been playing with you. But I would say, in the rock pop world, even the cover band world, doing real auditions is a thing.
Yeah.
I would say much more so than jazz. And I have a pretty funny story. Right after I moved out to LA, I was trying to get some gigs. I got in this like blues rock band that was really loud, and kind of fun. But I was looking to do some more stuff. So, I'm looking for, various audition announcements, and I found something, that was for a cover band, and they were doing auditions at a rehearsal studio. And I think they had like 10 drummers auditioning. And this was basically for a gig that was like very little money. And I'm like, oh man, okay, this is LA. There's like a million drummers auditioning for this one spot for no money.
Right.
Classic. So I go early, and I'm sitting outside the door, and I'm listening to the guy before me audition. He was spectacular, like mind-blowingly good. I'm listening, and they played Hold the Line, Toto, right? And, this, and it's got that triplet thing, and he played it so well. And they did this ending, and he played this ending like note for note off of like a live record or something, because I heard him talking about it afterwards. I didn't know that. I only knew that after I heard him talking. And I go in there, and I'm like, there is no way I'm going to play better than that guy. And I played okay. They enjoyed me. It was fun. But yeah, I didn't get that gig.
No. Did that guy get the gig, or was it? That guy's name was Jim Caro.
Anyway, yeah, that was a funny one, because so going back to auditioning, if you're auditioning for a pop rock gig or something like that, and you do an actual audition, usually they're gonna give you like a song list. They're gonna say, hey, learn these songs, and we'll come to audition and play them, and maybe we have a couple other people coming too. So okay, I'll let you take over. How do you prepare for an audition, Tim?
Well, actually, there's another kind of audition process that's out there for everyone. Is Primus, the rock band, was looking for a new drummer, and they have this whole series on auditioning people for Primus, and it's incredible. They had Thomas Pridgeon, Nikki Gillespie, Gergo Borlai, Thomas Lang, like all these cats, and a couple of other people that you haven't heard of, like the guy that ended up getting the gig, John Hoffman. So like that is an incredible process, because they kind of did the same thing with everyone. And a lot of it looked like they were feeling out personality, because like everybody could play. Everybody knew the material, with the exception of one who missed the email or something and didn't know the material, which was fascinating to me, because I feel like if you're going to audition for a band, you should probably at least know some of the material. And actually that brings up the point. Like, you need to know the repertoire. Like if I were auditioning for Primus, I would know every single song that Primus has ever written. Not just the ones that they sent me. I would know every tune, and I would go in there and I would destroy that gig. Like I would know it better than they knew it. And sometimes that happens, whenever you have to know the repertoire. So let's say you wanted to play with Branford Marsalis or something like that. You better know all of Branford's records. You better know like what he plays. You better know everything that he did, because if you do, then when you go in and play with him, he's going to be like, oh, you've done your homework. And that's how it goes. And no matter who you're auditioning for, do more than what the audition is requiring of you. And the more you do to say that you want that gig more than everybody else around you, the better you'll play and the better you'll do in that audition. And it's really just going to come down to personality a lot of times. I mean, I think I had an audition with this group that I didn't really know I didn't even know it was an audition. We were just kind of playing at the dude's house, and you know what? I made some mistakes because I wasn't feeling very good, and playing wise, it was fine. But personality wise, I think I was just talking too much. Honestly, I didn't ask them enough questions. And like, I think it really comes down to when you go in an audition, you have questions for them. Get the band talking about themselves, or the people that you're going to be auditioning for. Ask them questions like, what was your favorite experience on the road? Where's your favorite place to go? What's your favorite song to play? What's your least favorite song to play? Like, who are your biggest influences? And ask them those questions. Get them talking about themselves more than you talk about yourself. And I think that will help with the personality. I learned that a while ago on that one, because I was just talking too much about myself. Like, I think that's what it came down to. I just wasn't fully prepared to be a good human around other people. And so sometimes that happens, like you just get nervous and you just keep talking. So like I'm doing now. And also, being a teacher too, I think it kind of comes naturally to me to just speak a lot. That's why we're doing a podcast, right? So I'm always talking and trying to come up with solutions and trying to come up with ways of solving problems. Whereas like in an audition, you're not solving any problems. You just need to sit there and listen to them and be better than everybody else. Not necessarily in terms of playing, because like, think about Primus, the guy that got the gig. I mean, he's a fantastic drummer, but he came down to Gergo and John Hoffman. And I mean, technically Gergo's just a killing drummer. Like, the guy can play anything. Like, it's just ridiculous. But it really came down to, I think, personality and overall feel and passion for the music. You get somebody like that's like some of these guys that came in, they weren't necessarily the biggest fans of Primus. And so, like, if you're not the biggest fan of Primus, then how are you going to get the Primus gig? So I tell my students this a lot too, that are just getting into college. Like, find the people that you want to play with, send them an email, say, hey, someday I'm going to be your drummer. and so I've had some people do that, and it's worked for them. Like someday I want to be your drummer. I'm going to know all your tunes. I'm going to know all this stuff. And check in with them once a year and just keep your name in front of those people, and then go out and meet them when you're in New York and talk to them and ask them questions about their tunes and all that stuff. Because you're not ready when you first get out of high school, or even when you first get out of college a lot of times. But you will be ready someday. And the more you prepare to play with those people, and the more you say and visualize that you will be with those people, the chances are you'll get that gig at some point. So auditioning, I don't really do that often. I haven't been through an audition. I've helped people through a lot of college auditions, which has been a really great success and fun thing for me to do when it's college audition season. Oh my gosh, I thrive with my with my high school students. I just love it because they, we look for ways to help them stand out for college auditions. And that's what you want to do if you're in a college situation, is you want to look for a way to make yourself stand out. I've had drummers sing the lyrics to tunes, sing the melody to tunes on their audition tapes. I've had them, obviously play the melody on the drums, and just whatever it is, on Latin tunes, not playing a typical mambo or something, playing what you hear on the original recordings, and things like that will help you stick out. That if you can show, and this goes with knowing repertoire, if you can show that you've done your homework, then the people that are listening to your audition will say, hey, this guy's done, or this gal's done their homework. They've done their work. Let's give them another chance and see if they can make it into this college program. Right. So I don't know. That's been my experience. Also, when I was playing with Jeff Clayton, that started because he lived in town and he called up a bunch of people to come and play with him. And we ran through a lot of his tunes at his house, and he was learning new tunes. And that was kind of what it was. We would go, and I had no expectations of doing anything other than playing with Jeff Clayton at his house, which was a lot of fun. If you don't know who Jeff Clayton is, he's John Clayton, John Clayton's brother, leader of the Clayton Hamilton Orchestra. Unfortunately, he passed away, I think, in 2021. but yeah, I'll forever be grateful for my experience with Jeff Clayton. He was such an amazing soul that touched so many lives. And I was fortunate to get to play with him a bunch. And he took me on the road a little bit, and I got to play with some great musicians because of him. And it's, yeah. And that was all because I went to his house and played music with him for free. So, I'll never forget. I was in the car and he calls me up and say, "Hey, Tim, can you go and play this gig with me in Notre Dame? It's going to pay this much and, you know, be a whole weekend." My wife was in the car with me and she's like, "That's amazing. That was so much fun." And so, yeah, and, you know, going and doing a few of those things, that was a lot of fun. And that was because I showed up, I worked hard, and I listened to what he had to say. And that's what you have to do. That was a jazz audition of all jazz auditions. You just go over to the person's house and you play their music, and don't ask too many questions. Let them tell you what they want. And if they see that you listen to what they say, and that you're somebody that's not going to have an ego around their music, especially if it's their music. If you don't have an ego around their music and you just try and make as good a music as you possibly can, then you'll get the gig. So, yeah. That's how you audition for jazz.
Yeah. Obviously you want to be the best player that you possibly can be, you know, so that's practicing, you know, knowing the music, learning the repertoire of the people who you're auditioning for. We have in the sports world, we have a saying that, you know, you can only control what you do. You can't control anyone else. You can't control the competition. So all you can do is be as prepared as you can possibly be, and be yourself and be honest, and hopefully, you know, play as well as you can on that particular day. If someone else comes and they choose that other person instead of you, that's okay too, you know, because if you did your homework and you know that you played to the best of your ability on that day, there is zero to feel bad about.
Yeah.
That's one thing, excuse me, that I learned when I started getting back into playing when I was a little bit older. I did run into a couple of situations where I'd listen to the band's music that was looking for a drummer, and I'd be like, "Oh my God, that's perfect. I love that. I could totally, you know, play that really well." And then I get a hold of them, and then they found out how old I was, and they're like, "No, we're looking for someone, you know, a little bit younger." And I was a little bit shocked at first, and I was like, "Wow, really?" And then, you know, at first I was offended, but then I was like, "Oh yeah, okay. This is the music business, man. It's as much as we, you know, love to think about our art, music, as being timeless or not mattering what you look like, all that stuff. Especially in the rock pop world, it really does. I mean, you have to have the look and feel of the band, and you know, that stuff does matter. And then I moved out west, and it was like compounded by 10, right? It's more important than how well you play. But of course, everybody plays great. So, you know, so having said that, I really do think that, you know, even though you have to be patient, you might get a little bit frustrated. There's a place for everybody, you know, no matter how you play. Eventually, if you look hard enough, you stick with it, you're going to find your people.
Yeah.
And when you find your people, it's going to be awesome.
Think about like some of these guys like Kenny Aronoff, right? Like, when you look at him with John Cougar Mellencamp, when he was playing with him, he looked like an accountant, right? He had the bald head but the hair still going, and just kind of looked like an accountant. And then he got the gig with Smashing Pumpkins, and he turned into a rock star. And he's never looked back. Shaved his head, and then, you know, wears leather and glasses and all sorts of crazy stuff, and just became a rock star. And now, I mean, he's in his 70s, but he's playing with all these crazy acts, and like he's kind of the go-to guy for a lot of stuff. So, you know, like age can, especially with these younger bands that are just starting up, that's a thing, you know, like if you're in your 30s, you might be looking to start a family. You might be looking to, you know, be a little bit more stable in life, and, you know, you might be more boring, right? So, you know, in your 20s, you have a unique opportunity and a unique time. It's a unique time in your life where you can be dirt poor and it doesn't affect you. And in fact, all it does is it defines your character more. It turns you into the person that you're going to become. And so in your 20s, you get the chance to join these rock bands and sleep on people's floors next to litter boxes and, you know, all the stuff that I used to do when I was in my 20s. You know, like we would go play gigs in Boston, like in the band that I was in. We would play gigs in Boston. I remember this. And and not have a place to stay that night because we weren't going to drive back to New York at like 1 or 2 in the morning. It just wasn't safe. And so on the bandstand, we'd say, "Hey, is there anybody that wants to host us tonight?" And sure enough, somebody would be like, "Yeah, we're having a party. Just come on over. You can sleep on the floor." Perfect. And so we would, sleep on the floor and do the party. It was a party with Harvard students, I believe. Like, it was the smartest party I've ever been to. I remember like listening to these people talk, and I saw this other person that kind of had the same glazed look as me, and I looked over to him and I was like, "Is what they're saying English?" And they're like, "I think so." And neither of us could quite figure out because their conversation was just so mind-blowingly advanced. And it turns out they were talking about like Pokemon or something. But anyway, so but yeah, in your 20s, you have the opportunity and the ability to do those things. Now, in my 40s, there's just no way I would ever do any of that anymore. If I'm sleeping on the floor, I'm doing it with my kids in a tent in the wilderness, and and then we're going right back home to the house because I am not doing that anymore. But yeah, and you audition and you get into those situations because that's what defines you, and you never know. I remember playing in some of those bands, like we did some gigs in Chicago, and like there were a lot of people that saw me play as a rock drummer that were like, interested in having me in their bands. And so like if you keep playing and if you keep doing those gigs that you maybe aren't paying that much but give you sort of that exposure in your 20s in a way, that can lead to other things, and those other things can lead to other things, and then like that's your time in your life, is like early to late 20s. Get out there, do it, sleep on floors, and audition for as many things as possible, gain as much experience as possible, so that when you're in your 30s and 40s, you're doing the stuff that you really want to do, and making money at that point. You'll be making money at some point in your 20s, but you can expect to not make a lot of money at first, right?
Well, so. in the jazz world, I would say, audition wise too, like you can think of every gig that you have as being an audition as well.
Absolutely.
Because oftentimes, who goes to see jazz anymore? Jazz musicians, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're playing with someone who's got a reputation, there might be some players that come to see, and if they enjoy your playing, hey, guess what? They're gonna approach you and get your contact information.
Actually, what's really funny? Yeah. In my experience lately, it hasn't been jazz musicians. Like, in fact, it's really rare, at least in this area, for jazz musicians to come out and check it out, because it's got to be something real special for jazz musicians to come out. Otherwise, like they're pretty much just at home or playing their own
yeah, right, or they're at their own gig. Yeah. Well, still, I'll stick with my comment though. Is like if you think of every gig as sort of could possibly be an audition if someone is there. That
sometimes you're on a gig with somebody you haven't played with before.
Yeah.
And that turns into other gigs. And that's happened to me numerous times where like I'll be on a gig where I'm playing with somebody that's new to town or is passing through, and then that turns into like, hey, I'm coming through town again. I want to play with you, So those gigs turn into something, and it is always your audition. And in fact, I played with this great jazz ukulele player, who used to come out west. He's from New York, and he would come out west and he would hire me for the Northern California runs, and we would go up and down and play. And the first couple of gigs I did with him were just in a ukulele store. And then after that, he was just like, "You're my guy. Like, I can trust you. You play great. Like, this is it." And so we did a thing for Ukulele Magazine. Like, it's the weirdest thing, but it's so fun and neat. And that was my audition, really. It was just that one gig. And I exceeded expectations by knowing the music and by playing under them, making sure that I wasn't trying to play too loud and just keeping the dynamic really low, and understanding the people that I was playing for, and that's another thing too. Like, you have to understand, some people I play with, they need to be the center of attention, not you, not me. They don't want me to be the center of attention. So you have to know, like, when you're playing with somebody like that for the first time, it's like, hey, play under them, let them be the star of the show, support them to the best of your abilities. When it's your turn, they'll let you know it's your turn. but otherwise your support, especially as a drummer. So yeah, I don't know. I think auditioning in the jazz world is really just like you're saying, gigs and who you know. And, if you get that one opportunity, somebody that you've always wanted to play with that calls you, you better know the tunes better than they do. And you get it. So yeah, that's it really.
Yeah. I think that was a lot of good stuff. Right. So if you get fired, don't sweat it too much. Get back at it. Right. Don't take it too personally. If you,
growing experience. It's a growing experience.
It's going to make you a better musician in the long run. Keep practicing. And then, auditioning, be as prepared as you can. Don't stress about the other people. Just worry about, being your own honest self, and, be as prepared as you can, knowing what.
No, don't be as prepared as you can. Be more prepared than the band is. No more. Like, be an expert on the music that you're playing. That's what it is. And then if you're an expert on the music that you're auditioning to play with people, where you can say, hey, in fact, like this happened to me just the other day when I was playing a gig where I got hired kind of last minute, and I went through the tunes meticulously to the point where I found a couple of errors on charts. And I had to bring that up in the rehearsal for the gig, where I was like, hey, this is what the recording did, but this is what is on the chart. Should we talk about that? And every time they were like, oh yeah, good catch. That's awesome. And I was the new guy, you know what I mean? Like, so that's how you want to be. You have to be an expert on the music that you're auditioning for, and an expert on the band that you're auditioning for, if it's a band, or an expert on the person that you're wanting to play with and that person's music in their repertoire. And if you are, then the chances of you getting that gig are exponentially higher.
Yeah. Cool. Any closing, any other closing thoughts? I think we covered that pretty.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think, like you were just saying, just keep your head up and keep trying, and don't be discouraged if you don't get the first gig that you audition for. Just keep auditioning for gigs. One last story. When I was in high school, I auditioned for Disneyland to do their summer band or something. And up until that point, I had won every audition that I'd ever auditioned for. And I'm a jerk for saying that, I know. But anyway, so it just was what it was. I was kind of the big fish in a little pond at the time. And I went down and I auditioned for Disney thinking that I would have a chance of getting it. And I got a rejection letter. And instead of letting that get me down, I said, okay, that's cool. I framed that letter and I put it on my wall, and I said, never again. It happened again. But that was my motivation to be better. And so I kept trying to become better. And I was, and that helped me get into William Patterson. That helped me do the things that I did in New York and play with the people that I played with, and it helped me prepare me for all these other things. So rejections can be really blessings in disguise, and your character is defined by how you handle that sort of stuff. And if you thrive and you become a better musician, a better person over these rejections, and you don't let it eat at you too much, then you will succeed and you will have a good career. So yeah.
All right.
That's it.
Good stuff.
Awesome, Andy.
All right, man. Until next time.
All right. Sounds good. Episode 8 in the can.
There you go. All right.
All right. Take care, everybody.